on all other deputies on the high table, our distinguished members of ARNU, we want to commence the program, the 2020 annual retreat. We will start with the national anthem. Can we rise up for the national anthem? Thank you very much. You can have the seat. Distinguished members, we have today in our midst the dignitaries that we have invited to this opening ceremony, as well as the lecturers. If we look through your program, we have the Minister of Education, Madam Adamu, as our special guest of honor, and is simply represented here by no less a distinguished personality, Professor Abubakar Rashid, Executive Secretary, National Universities Commission. Our landlord in the FCT, Madam Muhammad Musa Bello, is also expected to be here with us today. But just last night, he got a presidential directive to move to Adamawa State to do some official assignment that many of us already know. But he still expected us enough to send in a powerful director in his office to represent him here today. So I have representing him Alhaji Ushirki. There is somebody here that needs no introduction to all of us. He is the keynote speaker for the annual retreat this year. And you will agree with me that we have brought a very big fish to speak to us at this annual retreat. We have in the house Professor Atahiru Jega OLPA. Also in the house is somebody I will call one of us. There is now an elder statesman of ARNU, and is invited here today in another capacity as one of our distinguished speakers. We have in the house Dr. Idris Jibril, the first registrar of Federal States in Nigeria. And of course, on the high table, you have the #1 registrar in Nigerian University, who is the chairman of ARNU, Mr. John Nnabuhi, the Registrar of Federal University of Technology. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make it clearly known to our distinguished personalities that we have a lot of members in the house here, so many cannot make it here today for one reason or the other, and we have made provisions of live streaming so that they can join us everywhere that they are in the country. But I will take some little time to make those who are here to quickly do self-introduction so that you can know who are in the house as registrars of the various universities. Because ARNU, as an association, is comprised of the registrars of both federal, state, and private universities in Nigeria. So we quickly do a self-introduction to make it, so we make it snappy, mentioning our name and the institution that we represent as registrars. Okay, before that, let me quickly introduce the ESCO. I have already introduced the chairman, who we all know. We have the vice chairman, Mrs. Adenike Patokun, the Registrar of Ajayi Crowther University. The general secretary and the chairman of the LOC, Amina Yusuf Kamba, MON, the Registrar of Sokoto State University. The Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Ania Jabasi Udopia, the Registrar of University of Uyo. Dr. Ahmed Hassan is the Welfare Officer and the Registrar of Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University. And my humble self, I'm Dr. Bola Adekola, the Public Relations Officer of the association. I'm the Registrar of Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, popularly known as UNAM. So quickly, let's have self-introduction.
The Honorable Minister, sir. Welcome. I'm Dr. Alfred Bolade. I'm the Registrar of Nigerian Maritime University for Pacific. I'm Gabriel Igbe, Registrar University of Calabar.
I am Musa Omba, Registrar, Frank Master of University, the Niger State, State-owned university.
Good morning, all. I'm Dr. A.B. Shields, Registrar of Federal University, Joshua, Niger State.
My name is Bala Ahmed II, Registrar, Nasarawa State University, Kebbi, your FCT level.
I'm Dr. Mrs. Bona, Federal University of Ilorin.
I am Dr. Stella Okonkwo, Registrar, Registrars University, Abuja.
I am Amin Bello Muhammad, Registrar, Federal University of Science and Technology.
President Muhammad Abdullahi, Registrar of the State University.
I'm Kabiru Gawamin, Registrar of the University of Kashmir.
I am Madam Bukar Usman, Registrar Federal University, University.
I am Monday Daniel, Registrar University of Jos, Plateau State.
I am Abubakar Aliu Barbeko, standing in for the Registrar Federal University, State University. Sorry, he was the
I am Bashar, Registrar of University of Nigeria.
I'm Dr. Sanla Abokibomoru, Registrar Federal University, Bukari.
I am Abdulaziz Yusuf Kazuka, Registrar Federal University of Agriculture, Zoo.
I'm Mrs. Kosedi, I'm representing the Registrar of Lagos State University.
Mr. Daniel Udigo, Registrar Federal State University, Abraham. Dr. Khalid Akibele Ney, Registrar, Land Technology, Lancet, Dumont.
Oporoluwa Akifemiwa, Acting Registrar at the Adas University.
I am Ahmed Mustafa, Registrar, Health Rest of Technology of Ogun State.
I am Femi Ogunobuju, Registrar, Olabisi Namba University, Akorowe, Ogun State.
I am Benjamin Jofo, Registrar, Niger Delta University, Wilberforce, Anambra State.
Fatima Binta Mohammed, Registrar, Bayero University, Kano.
Je m'appelle Maurice Ouko, secrétaire général de la Green Language Village, à l'Université d'Amérique.
I'm Dr. Walter Wedeme, Registrar, Congress of Gas Sciences.
I am Dorcas Otto, Registrar, University of Port Harcourt.
My name is Muhammad Salim, the Registrar of Federal University.
We thank you very much for your self-introduction. Can we have a clap for ourselves again? The next on our program is the introduction of the welcome address by the chairman of our Association of Registrars of Nigerian University, Mr. John Enabue. You are welcome.
The Honorable Minister of Education, Madam Adamu, ably represented by the Executive Secretary, National Universities Commission, Professor Abubakar Rashid,
the Honorable Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Malam Mohammed Musa Bello, ably represented, Professor Azahir Jega, our resource person, who is former Vice Chancellor of Bayero University, Kano, and former Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission. And the other resource person here present, Dr. Jibril, former registrar, University of Federal University, Lafayette. Our ARNU VC, Vice Chairman, other members of the executive, members of ARNU here present, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you this morning to our 15th annual retreat and 68th business meeting of the Association of Registrars of Nigerian Universities. I'm gladdened by the attendance to this retreat despite all odds. By our constitution, we usually meet twice a year, in April and in October. We were not able to meet in April because of the coronavirus pandemic. And when we got to October, we had earlier planned for this program. First, in the last minute, we had a clashing with the Muslim feast of Eid al-Maulud. We thought about contemplating changing, making adjustments, but we found out that the year has been so much occupied by other activities. 12 federal universities who are now in search of vice chancellors. Other universities also doing that, and the preparation for resumption of studies. So we pleaded with our Muslim colleagues who showed a lot of understanding and honorably and graciously agreed that we can continue with this program. I want to profusely express our apology to them for forfeiting this feast. It's like the Christians forfeiting their Christmas. So I want to say we thank you sincerely for showing this sacrifice. Thank you very much. Immediately we were done with that and we agreed. Before we were to say hurrah, then the NSAS protest started and we had security challenges around the country. But we are happy as registrars who are assisting to run universities. We were not daunted by the crisis in the country because our work must be done. So we all agree that we will still make it in spite of all odds. So I thank you all those who have pressed these challenges to be here. Thank you very much once again. The Association of Registrars of Nigerian Universities is an umbrella body of all registrars of Nigerian universities where we come to rub minds, exchange notes on the challenges of the job and provide some solutions to our day-to-day challenges in running the universities. We started as ARNU, and then we now migrated to the Association of Registrars of Nigerian Universities. As we said, this is our 68th business meeting and the 15th annual retreat. There are a lot of challenges facing the administration of universities, particularly these days when we are facing a lot of erosion of autonomy of Nigerian universities by various agencies. On day-to-day basis, registrars, particularly those of federal universities, get invitation. The registrars, vice chancellors, and other members of management get invitation to attend to one or other inquiry by various government agencies, including the head of service of the Federation, Auditor General, and so on and so forth. We can hardly sit down and do our jobs. So this has compounded the challenges we are facing in day-to-day running of the universities. We hope that at the end of this, we will come out with provide some solutions and give advice on how we can ameliorate these challenges. So once again, I welcome you all, and I urge us to listen. We have arranged an array of resource persons to talk to us today. Our keynote speaker is no less a person and somebody who has gone through the ladder of a university, starting from a lecturer, chairman of the president of Academic Staff Union of Universities, deputy vice chancellor, and later chairman, Independent Electoral Commission. He is going to give us his keynote address. We also have a former vice chancellor and a former executive secretary of the National Universities Commission, former executive secretary, Professor Peter, and also currently pro-chancellor of National Open University of Nigeria, Professor Peter Okubo, and we hope that he will be joining us virtually. Then the immediate past registrar of Federal University, Latvia, Dr. Idris. The second name, please. Jibril, yeah, Jibril. So I expect that we will listen carefully to these resource persons, and during our business session, we'll be able to synthesize the presentations, also aggregate our own opinion, and come out with some position on the way forward in administration of Nigerian universities. Once again, I say welcome. Thank you for coming.
Let's have another round of applause for our chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, the executive secretary of the NUC didn't come alone here. He has come with one person that many of you will have read so many circulars under his signature. And I'm not talking of any other person than the popular Chris Mayaki, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the NUC. And we also have with us Alhaji Ibrahim Yakasai, the Director of Public Affairs of the National University Commission. we know when we have this gathering like this, we want to listen to the chairman of the occasion. Luckily for us today, we have almost the biggest voice in the Nigerian university system. Because when you take the minister away, for us in the university system, the executive secretary of the National Universities Commission is one person that talks and we must all listen. So ladies and gentlemen, we are going to listen to the chairman of today's occasion, the executive secretary of this Nigerian university system, Professor Abubakar Rashid. Thank you.
The Minister of Federal Capital Territory, they are heavily represented. My boss and leader, Professor Harry Jega, the chairman of this noble association, the Association of Nigerian Registrars, the members of the Executive Council of this association, all registrars present here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. But let me say clearly that I'm happy to be here with you. And today, in one respect, I'm like each and every one of you. I have a dual role. I have a dual role, just like every registrar essentially has a dual role, two main roles. You are registrars and you are secretaries to all statutory organs of the university, and they are two different things. I am here first to represent the Minister of Education. That's one role. Second role, to represent the National Universities Commission. So, in the first role, I'm simply requested by the Minister to thank you for the invitation, to apologize for his inability to be here because what has prevented his friend and colleague, the Minister of FCT, from coming is the same reason that has prevented him. They have been ordered to go back to their states to consult to their constituencies with a view to dousing tensions in this country. But he has requested me to convey to you his deepest gratitude for the invitation and his best wishes to you. Now, in my role as ESNUC, I'm your friend. I want to congratulate you for this workshop, for this retreat, for holding this retreat. Yes, not more than 40 of you are here, but it's not the number, but the quality of representation. And this is a very high quality representation of the Registrars of University. I'm happy you have chosen the best person to give you the keynote address. Professor Jega was my Vice Chancellor, and he appointed me his Deputy Vice Chancellor. I worked very closely with him, And when he was leaving to go to INEC, he did everything possible within the ambit of law to ensure that I succeeded him. I deliberately use this because all those who know Professor Atari Jigan know him for one thing: respect for rule of law. That's why he is the best friend of registrars. The Nigerian university system today is in deep crisis. Very, very deep crisis. Partly because we seem to have collectively decided not to respect the provisions of laws in our universities. Registrars are custodians of the laws. They are custodians of the records. They are the secretaries to all statutory organs of the universities. Essentially, they are secretaries of the governing councils, and they are also secretaries of the university senate. The university senate is the most important organ in the university, the academic organ in the university. There can be no university without a senate. And the registrar is the secretary. So sometimes when we begin to emphasize the division in Nigerian universities, it's not helpful. To say somebody is academic or somebody is not academic is not helpful. Because there is nothing more academic than a senate in any university. Nothing more academic. And to me, there is nothing more academic than the person who is entrusted to record the proceedings of that senate. And that's the registrar. So in some respects, you are also academics. All of you are academics. We, as I say, are in a very deep crisis in Nigerian universities today. The system is expanding. As you are aware, today we have 172 universities. 79 of them are private, but they only carry 5.01% of the student enrollment. All the 79 private universities have only 5.01% of the total enrollment, while the 45 federal universities today carry 67% of the total enrollment. And the 48 state universities carry 27.9, almost 28% of the total enrollment in Nigerian universities. We have about 73,000 teaching staff in Nigerian universities across the system as of today. And we have 152,000 non-teaching staff as of today in the Nigerian university system. So by all definitions, the system is growing more complex. But the complexity is not the main issue at stake. It is the instability in the system. And as all of us know, in the past, the epicenter of instability, the main instigator used to be the students' union. Whenever you had in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, universities closing, don't ask. It is the students who are on trial. Now, students have been relegated in this important role. The are ranked lowest now. It is the staff, academic and non-academic, who are busy working. Sometimes, you see, there is something very paradoxical about it. The unions are working to bring about improvement in the condition of service and in the improvement of facilities and so on. But in the process, we have succeeded also in instituting a very volatile, very fragile system in the university. Just yesterday night, I have had to spend a number of hours trying to understand the mess going on in the University of Ibadan, the premier university, over its attempt to select a new vice chancellor. And the university literally has been grounded to a halt yesterday. People taken ransom. The council has had to suspend the process yesterday. Now this is just coming 1 week after the minister directed me to summon the council of the University of Uyo, again over the selection of a vice chancellor. If I were to go on, I will tell you that there is palpable tension in virtually all universities, in public universities in this country, who are in the process of selecting a new vice chancellor. The system has now become something else. The office seems to be gaining notoriety as just any public political office. Campaigns with posters. You see this as ESA, I receive every day. You see candidates campaigning with posters, with promises, inducements, and so on, lobbying, promising things you know will never be delivered, going around to factionalize, and we cannot succeed as leaders of Nigerian university system if this problem persists longer than necessary. Now, I just explained this to you because you are at the center of everything. Even though the processes of appointing vice chancellors does not clearly say this is registrar in the 5-month election team, but there is no process that can begin and end without the involvement and the guidance of a registrar. If an attempt is done, it will fail. And in my view, it is partly because either registrars have abandoned their fatherly role in the university, or some people have attempted to marginalize the role of the registrars, and that's why we are going where we are today. So I hope at the end of this ceremonial session, and after listening to my boss and my leader, Professor Jega, when you now go into the technical session, I hope you will think deeply on some of the problems in Nigerian universities. We are not likely to survive many of this. You know what is going on in Lagos. In Port Harcourt, some few months, we have had to get the council dissolved to suspend the vice chancellor. In Okero Kobo, we have had to dissolve the council, but the president to appoint the vice chancellor straight. In Dusumma, for 2 years, there was no leader. At the end, the council had to be dissolved and a vice chancellor appointed directly. And currently, 11 of the 12 new universities are processing this. And already the signals are not good. If anything, everybody is buying the most sophisticated weapons and moving to the areas to fight this war. People want to be vice chancellors at all costs. Certain vice chancellors want to install stooges at all costs. And we expect you. I will expect the outcome of this retreat, which I hope will, in many respects, help the National Universities Commission and the Nigerian university system to begin to understand where things go wrong and or how we shall begin to reclaim the institutions. I thank you very much for this ambush on you. We would not expect to get this for me. I congratulate you, just as the chairman of the association has done, especially for those of you who have had to sacrifice the Mulud. I have scheduled meetings in my office at 10 o'clock today. When the secretary of this association came to me yesterday, reminded me that I had to be here, so I had to now postpone my meeting to 12 o'clock. And then I was telling some of my management staff, one of them, very funny, says, he says he remembers very well, even as a young boy in their state, in Benue, sometimes they would just go to school and say, Maulud will simply appear. Maulud just suddenly appear, and they will say, it's Maulud, they go back home. So he says, Maulud is not like Christmas, it's not like Salah, it's not like this. It's most people forget when the holiday will come, and it comes so suddenly. That's why you have scheduled this meeting today. Nobody thought and knew that today will be declared a public holiday. But you have done well by telling this day. If you had shifted it would have caused another instability. And that's why I believe there is hope. There is hope in the system that with you waking up properly, I advise the vice chancellors and the other principal officers in the universities, there is hope. Stability may soon return to our institutions. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's obtain the applause. Let's obtain the applause. That is a clear inaugural lecture. Yes, sir. We cannot but be very, very grateful for the beautiful admonition that we have received from you. We will be coming back to you soon to discuss why the registrars are not being able to perform their roles the way you are expecting. Thank you very much, sir. We will now listen to the host minister, who will give the pre-remark to us to welcome us to FCT. The Minister of FCT, ably represented by Aliaji Ushiriki. Welcome.
The Honorable Minister of Education, ably represented by Professor Abubakar Rashid, the Executive Secretary, NUC, the Professor Atari Jiga, who happens to be my lecturer, Mr. Pedro, the chairman of the association, executive council members, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Minister FCT happens to be away, as you all know, because of urgent state matters. Please, I want to seek your indulgence with the Honorable Minister's speech. It is indeed my pleasure. It is my pleasure to bring our felicitation to the leadership and members of Association of Registrars of Nigerian Universities on the occasion of its 15th retreat and 68th business meeting holding here in Abuja, our beautiful capital city. The meeting offers us in the FCT administration a unique opportunity to convey our sincere appreciation to our association for its contribution towards the development of the educational sector. This retreat, I understand, is a yearly event, and the venue and national importance to those aimed at enhancing the growth and development of higher education in Nigeria. The theme for this year's retreat, University Administration in Nigeria under Democratic Rule, Issues, Challenges, and Ways Forward, is quite apt and could not have come at a better time than now, as many students are bracing up to face the rigors of securing admission placement in our universities. This retreat gives you a unique chance to work out modalities that will make the processes of securing university admission for qualified candidates stress-free. As university administrators with vast wealth of experience in the management of tertiary institutions, I implore you to also make critical looks at our tertiary institutions in Nigeria with a view of enabling them to deliver on the objectives for which they were established. Here in the FCT, we have placed a high premium on development of educational sector. We recognize education as a foundation of any national development and the key to inculcating the right values in our children and youth, and also provides the vehicle for self-actualization and fulfillment of personal and national ambitions. It is for this reason that we have invested so much to upgrade our educational institution as well as ensure effective service delivery. I believe that this retreat will produce far-reaching recommendations that will enhance the development of tertiary education in Nigeria. And therefore urge you all to give your best for the future of education in Nigeria, which rests squarely on the shoulders of individuals and associations such as yours. I wish you all a rewarding and productive retreat and business meeting. Thank you for your attention, and may God bless our collective aspiration. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for the Honorable Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy to have in our midst Professor Muhammad Jega, who is going to be our keynote speaker for today. It is not easy to say anything about President Jega, but I will attempt to do something in 2 minutes so that I can ask him to come and read his lecture to us. If I start what you all know, that one may be a lecture on its own. So I'll just do a brief citation on Professor Atahiru Jega, while I just ask him to do as we normally do, to please stand and remain standing. Professor Atahiru Jega was born on January 11, 1957 in Jega town of Kebbi State, Nigeria. The renowned academic was the former chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission from 2010 to 2015, and the former vice chancellor of Bareilles University, Kano from 2005 to 2010. Jega attended Sabongeri Town Primary School, Jega, between 1963 and 1969, and proceeded to the government secondary school training Kebbi, where he was admitted into the Ahmadu Bello University Zaria's Bayero University College, Kano, in 1974. He graduated in 1979 with a second-class upper division with a Bachelor of Science degree in Political Science. He joined that university as a graduate assistant, and he then earned a fellowship at Northwestern University, Evanston, Illinois, in the United States, where he studied between 1981 to 1984, and he got a PhD in political science. He later returned to the political science department of BUK in 1984 as a lecturer, and he rose through the ranks to become a professor. Professor Jega also occupied the following positions. He was a visiting senior research fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos, from March 1992 to March 1993. He was a visiting research fellow, Department of Political Science, University of Stockholm, Sweden. In 1994, he was a Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic of BUK from 1995 to 1996, and Director, Center for Democratic Research and Training, Bayero University, Kano, from 2000 to 2004. He is a member of the International Election Advisory Council, but one popular one that all of us will never forget, the prime role that he played as the president of Academic Staff Union of Universities when ASU was very, very well known to all of us as the prime mover in the system till the present day. So, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome to the podium Professor Atahiru Jega to give the guest.
The chairman of today's occasion, the executive secretary of the National Universities Commission, and also the representative of the Honorable Minister of Education, Professor Abubakar Adamu Rashid, the host minister, Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, happily represented, the President of the Association of Registrars of Nigerian Universities, the Deputy Executive Secretary of the NUC, the Director of Public Affairs of the NUC, Registrars of Nigerian Universities here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you for the honor of inviting me to deliver the keynote address at this event today. And I'm very glad to be here to speak on the chosen topic, which is university administration under democratic rule in Nigeria. Issues, challenges, and the way forward. But before I proceed, I need to, with due respect, Master of Ceremony, make some corrections. You see, this is the challenge of relying on social media to extract information about somebody's CV. I wasn't born in Jega. Although I am from Jega, my father is from Jega. So it's important that every opportunity I have to correct that. I was born in Kaduna, but my father is from Jega, and of course I am from Jega in the state like that. So I thought I should make that correction. But even more importantly, I did not graduate in 1979. I graduated in 1978. This is very important because people will say you are changing your CV and so on. Yes, and I think with those questions, I will proceed with my presentation. Another correction. I did not get my PhD in 1984. I got it in 1985. Okay, so please, these are very important corrections because people will later hold you accountable to that. Now, I have been asked to speak on university administration under democratic rule in Nigeria. I added in Nigeria. It just said under democratic rule. Issues, challenges, and the way forward. By way of introduction, I begin by saying that given the significant role of universities globally in terms of knowledge production and reproduction, training, research and innovation, and indeed overall national development, it is crucial to ensure that they have efficient and effective administrative structures and processes and also good responsible leadership presiding over and driving these processes. A poorly administered university, I believe, is a wasted national asset and investment in all fundamental respects. Conversely, a well-administered and democratically run university, in terms of transparency, accountability, and participatory decision-making processes, I argue, is a tremendous national asset and investment. And this is regardless of whether it is publicly or privately owned university. Also, I argue, regardless of a country's regime type, that is, regardless of whether a country can be said to be democratic or authoritarian, or a hybrid of democratic and authoritarian, because there are many countries like that, including Nigeria presently. A university administration, regardless of regime type, ought to be rational, efficient, and effective in bringing about the actualization of the core objectives of universities, namely the pursuit and utilization of knowledge in teaching, in research, innovation, and community service. And I again argue that the more rational, efficient, and effective university administration is, the better the chances of meeting the vision and mission of a university and the actualization of its core objectives. So very, very clearly, university administration is central to the actualization of the core objectives, the vision and the mission of a university, and how these contribute to national development. Of course, it is to be expected that university administrators would have greater scope to act rationally, efficiently, and effectively under a democratic dispensation than under an authoritarian rule. The attributes of a truly democratic system include, as we all know, freedom of choice, of expression and association, inclusiveness in decision-making processes, transparency and accountability, and of course, good governance. In the university system, these are illustrated by the bottom-up approach to institutional management, decentralization of authority, consultative and inclusive governance through committee system and academic freedom, amongst others. Given the nature of modern universities as universal communities of scholars, students, and administrators who together are preoccupied with knowledge production and its application to solve human needs and aspirations, authoritarian values and systems impose constraints which obstruct the realization of their core objectives. These include suppression of contrary views and opinions, lack of inclusiveness in the decision-making processes, top-down approach in management, despotism and arbitrariness in human resources management and human relations, amongst others. There are two main ways in which undemocratic authoritarian rule impacts on universities. One is with regards to undemocratic disposition of university administrators and or undemocratic and authoritarian national contexts. So on the one hand, if you have people presiding who have authority in the university system and are driving the administration of a university with authoritarian values and inclinations and dispositions, it impacts negatively in terms of what the university can do, how it can actualize its core objectives, and how even it can contribute to national development. On the other hand, if the national context is undemocratic, even if there is disposition in a university system for democratic values and orientations by the leaders, that national context will also impact negatively in the ways in which the university is run and in the ways in which it also pursues the actualization of its core values and objectives. So I think it's important to recognize this and to see that while a democratic context, whether national or within a university, is very important for university administration, and while authoritarian values within the university system or nationally are negatively impactful on the universities, in general, of course, an open democratic disposition is the best for the actualization of the core values of a university system. I give example by saying that if the national context is undemocratic and authoritarian, it constrains or obstructs democratization of university administration. On the other hand, even if a country can be said to be under democratic rule, a stream of undemocratic and authoritarian disposition by university administrators would be unwholesome and obstructive of realization of the vision and the mission of a university. In what follows in this keynote address, I first attempt a brief conceptualization of university administration for clarity. Second, I discuss the Nigerian context of the evolution and development of university administration in what I refer to as contextual or situational analysis. Third, I identify what I see as the major issues and challenges currently affecting and constraining democratization of university administration, which needs to be urgently addressed in the context of national democratization and democratic development. And fourth, I conclude with a discussion of what I see as the way forward in this context. Now, what is university administration? And I think it's very important to discuss this because I had a sense that when I was invited to speak to this august gathering, the assumption is that university administration is just for non-academic staff, the registrars and the other support staff. And I think it's important to recognize the broader definition, for our own context and in the interest of the university system to recognize that broader definition. It is important at the outset to distinguish between what is conventionally and globally referred to as academic administration in a university and the broader concept of university administration. The former, that is academic administration, is much narrower and specific, while the latter is broader, involving all facets of the management of universities. In this presentation, university administration is conceptualized broadly to mean how a university is administered, managed, and piloted towards actualization of its core objectives and its articulated mission and vision statements. It is not just about the routine work of non-academic staff administrators in court, for example, looking after students and staff records, human resources management, long-term planning, fundraising, and provision of student services. It is more generally about the combined work of managers in code of the institution, what we call university management, consisting of vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, registrar, bursar, librarian, and so on, and the other decentralized authorities in the system, such as deans, directors, and heads of departments and units. In a complex organization such as a university, administration is a complex interplay of relations and interactions across both academic and non-academic arenas in the university environment. And I think all of us, whether academic or non-academic, working in the university, have to recognize this. Because if the university is functionalized along the lines of non-academic staff doing some work and academic staff doing another kind of work, obviously it becomes very challenging in terms of working closely together in order to advance the vision and mission and the key or core objectives of a university. So clearly, when we look at university administration, we must constantly bear in mind that it is broader and it concerns both academic people given management positions as well as the non-academic staff holding key positions in order to work together to advance the interests of a university. So what is the contextual background? And here I look very briefly at it. In the evolution of the Nigerian university system, university administration, as broadly defined, has gone through at least 3 distinct phases. As the first generation universities emerged under colonial rule, for example, University of Ibadan in 1948 and University of Nigeria in Nsukka in 1955, and the immediate post-colonial period of University of Lagos, University of Ife, now OAU, and Ahmadu Bello University, all in 1962. Their administrative frameworks and structures were patterned after universities in the United Kingdom at that time. Hence, in many fundamental respects, they were democratic in nature, with essentially democratic administrative frameworks. Each university is established by law, with the functions of key organs of the university and its leaders or university management defined, and their relations to each other carefully delineated. The essential elements of the democratic nature of university administration include operating with establishment laws, respect for and compliance with due process, and the ESNUC has emphasized this, academic freedom in pursuit of knowledge, and decentralized and collegiate decision-making processes through a committee system. During that early phase, I think one can say without any fear of contradiction that the universities were operating in a collegial atmosphere, both academic and non-academic staff working within the laws that established those universities, and also operating democratically with the traditional bottom-up approach of the system in decision-making going through the committee system, in a bottom-up approach manner. From 1966, under successive military authoritarian rule, until 1999, I think one can also say, without fear of contradiction, that authoritarian values and dispositions engrossed upon and pervaded the university system. As military rulers tampered with appointment of vice chancellors, and many of those so appointed pandered to the interests of the appointing authorities in their relationship with staff and students, due process was essentially trampled upon, Academic freedom came under attack. The committee system was literally truncated, and decision-making became exclusive and arbitrary, rather than inclusive, participatory, and democratic. Routine administrative processes increasingly lost rational content and increasingly became inefficient and ineffective in facilitating the core objectives of the universities. The negative impact of structural adjustment program from the middle of the 1980s, combined with the authoritarian dispositions of university administrators, nurtured under military rule to undermine healthy growth and development of the Nigerian university system in many fundamental respects. For example, universities witnessed staff exodus, drastically affecting teaching, research, and innovation, and the nation's socio-economic development processes suffered from the phenomenon of brain drain. Poor conditions of service and of work pushed more and more academic and even non-academic staff out of the universities. And university infrastructure and facilities deteriorated because of underfunding and bad governance. By the 1990s, the Nigerian university system had become among the worst in the world, also characterized by incessant and persistent student protests and the staff strikes. Since 1999, and this is the third and the last phase, or the current phase, since 1999, with the return of the country to civil democratic rule, university administration could be characterized as a sort of a hybrid system, circumscribed by democratic and authoritarian values. Arguably, university administration has been relatively better off than they were in the middle of the 1980s, but nonetheless, far less than they were in the post-independence pre-military period or era. And this is essentially because of two main reasons. One, the negative effects of the neglect of the 1980s and the 1990s under military rule, which are yet to be resolved. And two, in particular, the general legacies of military authoritarian values, which has been deeply entrenched, and that is remarkably constraining, if not obstructive, of national democratic development in general and democratization of the university system in particular. So, since 1999, we say we are under military, we've moved into the Fourth Republic, which is democratic. But that situation carries the baggage of military rule, very deeply entrenched legacies of military authoritarian rule. And this pervades all sectors of the political economy, whether in the university system or whatever. And that baggage we still have not been able to address. A relatively brief transition to democracy by the General Abdulsalam Abubakar military regime, compared to Babangida's transition without end, ushered in the Fourth Republic on May 29, 1999, with democratically elected civilian administrations at the federal and state levels. Since then, scholars of transition to democracy have been arguing about the nature and character of the Nigerian situation. Some say that it has been merely a transition to from military rule to rule by civilians, while others say that it has been placed on a trajectory of democratic development, only that attainment of democratic consolidation has been very slow in coming, as elections seem to be merely rituals, and the country has been characterized by bad governance, which has dampened popularities and aspirations by the denial of what people call dividends of democracy. In any case, electoral politics and its outcome has essentially been dominated by what, again, some scholars like myself call militicians, or politicians with either military mindsets or even military backgrounds and dispositions. This has made progress in democratic development nationally and good governance very slow, if at all, and it has been infused with vandalization of state resources and all manners of corrupt practices, which are encroaching even within the university system. In fact, one of the most dangerous and damaging consequences of this hybrid system that we operate now is the way in which corrupt practices are now being deeply embedded into particularly the public sector universities, quite often in connivance with elected officials, whether legislators or even some other government functionaries, or facilitated by chairmen and members of governing councils that are appointed by virtue of political considerations and the clientelism. And we see this happening. This period, I think, relatively coincided with the infusing of more resources into the university system, relatively compared with the past. But as more resources come into the public sector universities, they are also followed by the general tendency of corrupt practices, which we know in other sectors of the public. And all these things that the ES mentioned earlier on, about the do or die struggles to become vice chancellors, or to influence the appointment of registrars who are the custodians of records and contracts documents, and so on and so forth. All of these really are related to that, because contractors want particular people to be VCs, and incumbent VCs want to install what do you call them, replacements that can continue with the arrangements that they have made. And so contractors are willing to, I am sure ES hasn't had this. so a lot of the corruption that goes into elective offices at the national level under this hybrid system of democracy, it's also now getting into the university system. So all the crises we see are really on account of this. So this situation of civil rule with little, if any, democratic content has negatively impacted all other institutions in the country, such as the universities. And that has now made university administration very, very challenging indeed. So what are the issues and challenges? And I try to narrow down on some. There are many issues and challenges, but I have identified only a few for our attention. Presently, some of the serious issues and challenges which bedevil university administration and Nigeria and need to be squarely and decisively addressed in the Nigerian university system, and which impact negatively on the actualization of the core objectives of the universities, include the following. One, the composition of governing councils. The government, particularly the appointment of chairman and the external members of council. This is a link between the larger national politics and the university system. Composition of governing councils over the years, from the military era to the current civil democratic dispensation, appointment of external members of university governing council has been obsessively guided by cliental and partisan considerations. Competence, merit, and professionalism are sacrificed. The quality of policy and decision making has been negatively affected by this. For many chairmen and external members, therefore, being on university governing councils is seen as an opportunity to collect allowances regularly and to get or influence contract awards for self-enrichment, rather than an opportunity to contribute to the growth and development of the universities. Many of these chairmen and external members don't even understand what the core objectives of the universities are or what the articulated missions and visions of the universities are. Now, I'm talking more about public universities where government appoints, but even in the private universities, we begin to see some tendencies, where people who are so-called proprietors actually privatize the resources of the university and actually, with their authoritarian and authoritarian dispositions, they also affect what goes on with regards to teaching and learning and innovation. In fact, they negatively affect the administration of the universities. And there are a lot of these things that have been happening in many of the private universities. So one way, I believe, in order to reduce the challenges of administration in the university system, to recognize in the public sector universities, appointment of governing councils, particularly external members, is sanitized. Government can appoint because government provides a substantial funding, but government must pay attention to merit, to competence, to integrity of the people who are appointed. Otherwise, and there are stories of chairmen of governing councils who probably contested elections and lost elections, and therefore lost a lot of money, and who come into governing councils with a view to how they can just get some recouping of what they have lost. And therefore they pursue contracts, and when it comes to appointment of vice chancellors, they take cash. The highest bidder gets the position of the vice chancellor. So these are very, very serious challenges that need to be addressed. And I'm sure, although leaders may not want to tell us, but I'm sure if you investigate some of these recent crises that are going on with regard to pending appointment of vice chancellors, you will find that many of these are related to this kind of phenomenon. So it's very, very important. Yes, of course, there are internal members of council, and some of them are not overboard. So even from within the university system, we have to pay attention to who gets elected from the Senate into university councils. We really have to increasingly, even internally, pay attention to competence and merit. Otherwise, there are people out there also who are just looking for opportunities. And once they get into councils and it comes to appointment of vice chancellors, they are internal members, but they can take money, okay, and they can also therefore add or complicate the challenges of university administration by getting large people into leadership positions. So it's a two-way process. The challenges are such that they have internal dimensions and they have external dimensions, and we all have to address this in order to improve things. So the second, of course, is related to the first, is the issue of the tenure of governing councils. We not only need to appoint good people into councils, we also have to protect the legal provisions about the tenure of councils. A situation in which a government can also dissolve councils, sometimes without really due process, is also something that should be frowned at and indeed opposed. I think that appoint good people, then allow them to run through their tenure, because we also need stability in the system. Tenure, although the laws establishing Nigerian universities specify the tenure of councils, often the appointing authorities truncate the tenure and dissolve councils arbitrarily and abruptly. This does not augur well for the stable and smooth running of the universities according to the legal framework. One must concede that some of the councils are dissolved because of clear irregularities, but this should be also made clear to the public, because arbitrariness actually underlines the essence of due process and respect for those which established these universities. The third issue also relates to the faulty recruitment processes of leadership in the administration of universities. And when I say leadership, broadly again, you are not just talking about the vice chancellor, the registrar, the bursar, and the other so-called principal officers. We need to review the process of the appointment of the vice chancellors and the principal officers of our universities. Again, emphasis has to be on merit, on competence, and also on the integrity and transparency of the process that brings this leadership into being. Another major challenge, and again, all these issues are interconnected. When you recruit a bad leader, then obviously that bad leader will have either inferiority complex, or there will be no transparency and accountability in the ways and manners in which the institution is administered. So obviously there is a lot of lack of transparency and accountability. Simple things like auditing, regular periodic auditing are not done. But it's not enough to just do a financial audit. Administrative audit is very, very important, and it is hardly done. So when it comes to recruitment, for example, it's not about whether there are vacancies or there are positions. All you want to do is to put people, because now it's IPPS. So anybody you put on the IPPS, you get money for. Because in the past, people are recruited really just arbitrarily. So it's very, very important. This issue of accountability goes beyond just financial accountability, even administrative accountability. There are stories, in particular, about how vice chancellors, particularly close to the end of their tenure, will recruit 200, 300, 400 people, without due process. Even their DVCs probably will not even know. Maybe the registrar will know, because she has to issue the letters of appointment. But these things happen, and it's really terrible in the university system. Well, not to have that transparency and accountability is a serious challenge, and we have to find ways and means of addressing it, because it affects university administration related to the core objectives and the vision and missions of universities. The fifth challenge, which I intend to raise, is that of what I call unhealthy and unwholesome relationship between academic and non-academic staff. Struggles by university unions to improve salaries and conditions of service of their members have since the 1990s unwittingly introduced frictions and unhealthy rivalries between academic and non-academic staff, to the detriment of the smooth running of the universities. And I must say that some of us may have been responsible for that, but upon reflection, this unhealthy development has to be addressed. I know, for example, when we were struggling to improve conditions of service in ARNU in the 1990s, in order to justify salary increases for academic staff, we had to argue about the need not to compare what we call apples and oranges, and that you should pay everybody in accordance with their description of their work, and the relative comparability of the ways in which other countries have done it. And unfortunately, as a response and a reaction to that, the non-academic staff also became antagonistic, and it became a mutually antagonistic relationship. You know? But the negative fallout of that is, look at what is happening now. The academic staff will now be on strike and they will be negotiating with government, you know, and the non-academic staff will hold on. As soon as it finishes, they also start their own strikes and cycles. So there is now perpetual instability in the university system. And this is disruptive of the actualization of the core values of the university system. And it is an unwholesome situation, because unity of purpose, in fact, can help in terms of collective advancement of interest. So we need to really think much about how we can mitigate this unhealthy rivalry within the university system, and how we can promote closer working relationships, because it's in the larger interest of the university system. And it is very, very necessary that we do that. The last point I want to make as a major issue and challenge related to the democratization of the university system, and I think the ES in its earlier contribution has discussed this, is what I call the non-inclusivity of students in university administration. In many universities globally, increasingly, this is seen as good practice. You know, students are placed in key university management committees, including the Senate. You know, but increasingly in Nigerian universities, particularly public universities, students are just seen as buyers of a product. And I think this is, in fact, something that the World Bank itself is encouraging. You know, universities produce products. What is that product? Education that is certificated. And the students need to pay for that, and therefore they are buyers of product, and therefore how the system is managed should not concern them. I think we have to revisit this and review it, because if the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, they can begin to learn leadership even within the context of the educational institutions that they are trying to get education from. And we have to begin to open up the university system, allow some form of democratic participation and involvement, and ensure that the energies and resourcefulness of our young men and women are also tapped in many respects. The services we offer to them should be informed by their own appreciation and thinking in terms of how this can best be provided. So I have identified, if I say there are many issues and challenges which impact upon governance or administration in the university system, and I think that addressing this will go a long way in improving not only the democratic content of university administration, but also improving the chances of it being key to actualization of the core objectives of the university. So what is the way forward? Of course, clearly, one of the ways forward is to begin to address these issues and challenges. But more importantly, we also have to recognize that there is more to do than just addressing specific challenges. So in the way forward, I say that as we cannot successfully deepen democracy in Nigeria without Democrats, and unfortunately that is what we seem to be doing. We have had transition to democracy since 1999, but all we have are either politicians or people with military background, you know, and the values and the orientations are still authoritarian values and the orientation, and what I call a hybrid, but the supremacy of authoritarian values are quite clear in the ways in which our politics and our elections and other things take place. So we seem to be trying to build democracy without democrats. Because it is an issue of mindset, it's an issue of values, and an issue of orientation and disposition. And because it is a hybrid system, that's why that is happening, and of course with negative consequences. But I say that if we can't build a democratic system nationally without democrats, we also cannot bring about democratic university administration without democrats in leadership positions in the university system. If people who become vice chancellors also begin to think like those outside of the university, that they bought the position, or their contractors bought the position for them, or they own that position by virtue of their godfathers outside of the system, then they will continue to operate with that mindset, okay, that value orientation, which is not democratic, which only panders to either their self-interest or to the interest of those whom they think are responsible for their getting the positions that they hold. So it's very, very important that we recognize this, and the recruitment process in the university system therefore needs to be reviewed. Paying attention, blocking all those loopholes that allow corrupt practices to influence the appointment of leaders in the university system, and also, in particular, to ensure that only people of merit and competence, and selflessness, who are driven by selflessness and the vision of making impactful contribution in their universities to become leaders in these universities. And I speak of leaders generally, not just vice chancellor, but also all the other management positions, including deanship and the headship of departments and the units. Now, of course, I say that this may be something that may be considered as difficult, but it is something that can be done and ought to be done. And maybe university unions need to begin to think about that internal reform process, rather than just struggling with government for conditions of service and conditions of work. Because even if now, the way the universities are now, even if you get the best conditions of service and you get all the resources coming into the system, the bad leaders will vandalize these resources and it will not be impactful. So those internal challenges need to be addressed, and we have to begin to think of how best to address them. So I say that democratic values and disposition are key to desirable growth and development of our universities, and they need to be nurtured and entrenched. We need people in leadership positions who are transparent, who are accountable, who are selfless and patriotic, and who are decent and can run universities decently, and who are also unifiers rather than parochial and divisive spoilers. In addition, key stakeholders in university communities need to eschew destructive rivalries and forge a united front and join hands to work together to improve the democratic content of the university administration. In this regard, academic and non-academic staff need to work hard to rationally improve relations and work together for the growth and development of their universities. The current undesirable hybrid system of mixed authoritarian and democratic values and orientation, which pervades our universities and indeed our nation, need to be replaced with fully democratized administrative system. This may appear to be difficult, but it is not an impossible task. If there is a will and resolve and concerted action, it will be sooner rather than later, and it will sooner come to pass. So thank you very much for allowing me to run this.
Can we continue to clap from before so that us
Let's have one. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, you will all agree with me that we couldn't have chosen a better person to address us on this auspicious occasion. Starting from what the ES told us on the roles of registrars and the way our erudite scholar has assisted us to look through the university system as it is today, we know that there is a lot of work to do. If we really want to run a university that has the element of world class that we always talk about. So definitely, therefore, I am very, very sure that that thought-provoking lecture will generate some questions, comments, and observations. So I will ask the chairman to direct the question and answer session so that we can, when we wrap up with that, we can then go into the tea break. Mr. Chairman, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, let me join you and the rest in thanking the keynote speaker for this very stimulating and in many respects highly technical presentation. You need to be in the right frame, in the democratic frame of your mind to fully understand the full import of what the keynote speaker has said. And it is clear that only an insider can say what he has said. An insider, one, of the university system, an insider in the Nigerian political evolution, and an insider in the political democratic discourse itself. So we are very lucky, and we thank Professor Jega for this presentation. So let us just take a few questions. We will not take remarks because we will not allow. Let's just get a few questions, not more than 3 or 4, and then we will respond, and we'll go for the tea break and allow you to continue your. So, any questions? Anybody with a question? Okay, that's one. Any other? Okay. Okay. 3. Yes, sir. Take one more. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Where? Anyone in the middle here? Nobody there? Okay. So let me start there. So please ask your question.
Number 1, please call 122.
Thank you, sir. Standing on all existing protocols, Ms. Walt, I wanted from Palmer University of Medical Sciences. Thank you very much, guest speaker. For what you have mentioned, what I take away from it is in relation to students. The issue of meeting students' legitimate expectations. From what you have said, it zeroes down what we're experiencing today. Students' expectations are not met in any form. But I recall that the issue of autonomy of university was to particularly help on the appointment of governing council members. Is that, I would say that objective was really achieved, also was at the forefront to get autonomy someone that asks you as at the end. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Then that will yes, you and then your friend.
Mr. Chairman, sir, members of the high table, distinguished registrars, my name is Bala Ahmed II, Registrar of State University, Turkey. I want to very seriously commend the keynote speaker, our veteran professor, and of course a Democrat to the core, Professor Jiga, for this very beautiful presentation. In his keynote address, he identified some of the issues challenging universities in Nigeria today, especially public universities, regarding the undemocratic issues concerning university administration generally, particularly the appointment of vice chancellors, which goes down to the fact that governing councils in public universities have evolved very serious tendencies of interfering with the smooth appointments of vice chancellors. And this has to do with, of course, the appointment of such council members. I want to urge, rather than asking questions, to tax the National Universities Commission, especially with the appointment of governing councils in federal universities, to reduce the tendency of appointing politicians who are being appointed to come and settle their appointments. Having contested election and failed, government consider them for this appointment to come and leverage on their pockets that they probably what they have lost during elections. And this has really impacted negatively in the process of appointing chief officers of the university, particularly principal officers, from the vice chancellor to the registrar to the bursar and even university librarian. And this has affected the smooth administration of universities nowadays. So the onus is on the National Universities Commission to actually guide the federal government in the appointment and the constitution of governing councils in Nigerian universities. It should be restricted to professors or professionals who know the nitty-gritty of university administration, rather than handing universities to politicians who are just out to make money without even understanding the tenets of university administration. If that is done, I think it will assist federal universities and even state universities to go a long way in sanitizing the process of appointment of vice chancellors and other principal officers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to the next, I think I may be qualified to a little bit respect. Well, I'm surprised somebody from National State University, a state government university, is lecturing federal government on the appointment of professors because the worst countries are state government, and your university has been one of the worst in terms of. But that is not to say you have no right to ask a question. But I just want to tell you that NUC, as a commission, has no direct hand. We do not. Government does not outsource that responsibility to us and say appoint. But let me also correct you, sir, on the other issue. Professors don't necessarily make better pro-chancellors. Some of the crises we have been going on now are by councils headed by professors, old professors, who have been accused of all kinds of undemocratic tendencies, corruption, and so on. And I have brought them, we have been talking with them. So it is not as straightforward as you would say, but I'm sure the speaker will be able to shed more light. I only want to say, don't blame NUC. If you don't know, the federal government has not outsourced that aspect to us. We may advise
but advisors only advise. And you know better than anybody. You as a registrar, you are an advisor. I don't know if all your advice is needed.
Chairman, sir, and our guest speaker, we are privileged to have you today. We are grateful to God, and I actually want to say, I want to congratulate Anne for the choice of this man of honor to present papers. I'm happy the way it has come, and I pray that the media will represent us very well so that government can be better informed. Actually, like the NUC Executive Secretary has said, you cannot take blame for that because it's political and it comes from the top. They did that as it may, kindly in our community, something should be done so that this thing is brought to, something happened in NDA recently, which is very sad, and it is happening all over, so that government can be brought to take note of all this so that we can correct it. If the university cannot set a pace, it will be difficult for any other system in this country to do whatever is right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last one.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished the Speaker, my dear colleagues. Mine is just an issue which I think has run through the presentations. The major issue now challenging university administration is something that has just started coming up from the civil service, particularly in terms of employment. A university may have approval from the NUC to mount some program or to begin to prepare for resource verification. But you now see the head of service has come in terms of employment, you have to get approval from them. The office of the head of accountant general is there, IPPIS is there, the Federal Character Commission is there. Now, eventually the National Assembly has come to issue circulars to universities directly, so that if you want to employ, you must get approval from them. At the National Assembly, there are 4 committees, one on tertiary, one on federal character, the other one on budget, and there's another one on employment. So all these committees from the National Assembly, we just got a letter yesterday from the head of service that they have declined our request to recruit professors to run some programs. While we have already attached approval from the NUC to run some of these programs. So this is a very serious challenge that is now the developing the administration of the university. I think maybe the NUC, Committee of Vice Chancellors and the other agencies must come into survey as of this serious challenge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Is there any question from a female registrar? If none, then I will request the registrar of Bayero University, ARNU, registrar, to ask a question. This is democracy.
Thank you very much, sir. All protocols observed. Actually, I don't have a question. It's just a comment. Like the guest speaker said, contractors in the institute VC, maybe they try to influence the appointment of the next coming VC. Also, the state governors, the political parties influence the appointment of a vice chancellor because now they are the returning officers. they also they act as the returning officers, so the state governments influence their appointment so that they can maneuver the votes of the electorate. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for that very important comment. And I think we will now listen to Professor Jega for his response.
I think the first person to ask a question relates to whether the autonomy that ASU has been demanding for university councils is not what has resulted in this challenge of politicians and so on acting the way they do in our university councils. Well, autonomy itself for universities is good. In fact, it's very good. So the issue is not really the autonomy. The issue is the kind of people that are appointed, and the people that are appointed clearly compromise the autonomy because they themselves either do not understand it or because they pander to other interests, they help to undermine it. So that's why what is key is not to deny university autonomy, but to recognize what it means to have autonomy and therefore appoint the kind of people who can protect the autonomy of universities when they get those positions. So, to my mind, if we can get the appointing authorities to ensure that only people of integrity and competence are appointed, these people will do their best to protect the relative autonomy. When we say autonomy of universities, it's not total autonomy, but it's relative autonomy. But universities need that relative autonomy in order to actualize their vision and the mission statements. You know, we should not allow a situation in which, because government, whether federal or state, is the funder of public institutions, so therefore it should dictate what they do, or appoint people who will not protect that relative autonomy. And if people who are appointed have integrity, they have competence, they understand what a university is, they will help protect that autonomy. And they will exercise the powers that autonomy gives them with responsibility. So really, the bottom line is getting the right kind of people appointed so that they can strengthen rather than undermine the relative autonomy that universities require. I agree with the ESNUC, you know, it is not about professors being appointed, but it's about good people. But good people who have integrity, who have competence, who have maybe requisite experience, that they can bring to bear. You know, yes, there are good professors, there are also bad professors, you know, or engineers or whatever. And if you bring a bad person and give him responsibility, he will abuse it or undermine it. So I think that really is a problem. So professors are not a homogeneous category of good people. You know, even in our own departments, we know some professors that we cannot trust, even with student records, not to talk of responsibilities of a council of a university. So really, I think that is the core thing. You know, how do we get good people who have the competence, the integrity, and the cognate experience to handle that responsibility as it should be handled. And there are many of them around, But I think what has happened is that over time, government, whether federal or state, consider university councils like just any other board, where you use it to reward partisan supporters or funders or whatever. And unfortunately, therefore, when they come to appoint people into those positions, they are just trying to reward people in their parties who have either lost the election or who want to contest the election and therefore need the money. So those, I think, are the challenges. The focus really should be in having good count people. And there are many, as I said, that can be selected to handle that responsibility. If only government can devote time and the energy to select the best people for those kinds of positions. And I think that's what we should really keep agitating on. I agree that universities need to set the pace and government has to do something to address this. But we also need to keep putting pressure on government on this regard. And I think, again, unions and associations like this also have a responsibility. If your communiques come out with concrete recommendation about appointment of good people in governing councils, it goes a long way. And the S unions also discuss or negotiate with government and make those kinds of demands. It goes a long way, but we need ourselves really working together and exerting pressure for this necessary reform that can go a long way in improving administration and good governance in our university system. Yes, I think clearly the autonomy of universities has been approached upon, and this has been illustrated by the point that has been made about these other committees of the National Assembly or Federal Character Commission and the others. But to a large extent, again, we allow it. We allow it. The point I made earlier about the Vice Chancellor who wants to appoint 200 people single-handedly in his last 1 month in office. He needs approval also to be able to do that. So federal character will bring people, all committees will bring people. So he will take some of them and then he will put the ones that he wants. So he no longer discusses with his immediate community. So I think we allow that to happen. I was chairman of INEC, and we did recruitment when I was chairman of INEC. These people, they are also afraid. They can push. They can push, but when you hold your ground, there's nothing they can do. But people, because you want to do something wrong, so you can't hold your ground. And once you don't hold your ground, then they will keep on encroaching into the autonomy. So I think really we also have to work hard to resist those kinds of pressures that come from outside, which we easily seem to succumb to. And lastly, I agree that influence comes in various ways. And certainly a lot of it now comes from governance. So they may have the notion that perhaps if they help to appoint a vice chancellor, then they might influence that vice chancellor when it comes to return for elections. As Ajia Fatima said, it's possible, it's plausible, but it will be very, very difficult in that regard because Anyway, in Nigeria, nothing is impossible, so I don't want to. So I think we need to bear that in mind and also see how that kind of can be mitigated. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I know from the last issue will be very interesting because Professor Jega introduced that practice of getting professors, vice chancellors, and after the last election, I have had to call a meeting of vice chancellors to discuss, and I wanted a resolution to go and tell INEC that we don't want to be involved again because the rate at which the credibility of the university system and that of vice chancellors is being eroded through the compromises being accusations against vice chancellors during the elections. We thought that would not continue, but others say, well, if not the vice chancellors, which category of Nigerians would you select to do that kind of job today? If not from the academy, you can't go to the military, you cannot go to the judges, you cannot go to the politicians themselves, you can't go to the civil servants, the main civil servants, not public servants. So, in many respects, the vice chancellors still, in spite of the serious complaints, may still remain the most credible lot to continue doing this. But I want to make last comment on the issue of autonomy. I want to agree with the speaker that in many respects it is the universities or the vice chancellors that have given room. As Chinua Achebe will say, he who brings do not complain when lizards start to pay you business. I have had cause to summon many vice chancellors and advise them in my office that why do you come to Abuja and why I hear many of them moving from one office to another? What will they do? You have already become a vice chancellor. Then you say you must be friend to almost all committee chairman. What will they do to you? You want to be close to the office of the general? What do you want to do? If it is your good, you will get it. Why do even the Minister of Education? What do you need to do in the Minister of Education? You see some vice chancellor going from office of the director to another. I suppose I said, what are you doing? That's why you will now invite lizards to your house. Yeah. Because I know, and I know that Professor Jega himself will remember, I don't think he has been to any other office in Abuja on occasion. I mean, if he's invited, if it's either MUC or the National Assembly, if are officially invited for council. But you see, EC spending more time in Abuja, not visiting us, not visiting NEC. We will hear them, sometimes we catch them red-handed in the ministry. I thought people come to in the ministry. What will you do? So many directors in the ministry and others will forget about NUC, will just be communicating to them directly, and they think they are getting favors. When appointments come, it's true. I know that as a vice chancellor, I've actually doubled the staff strength of my university academics, and I could not remember one single influence. Even the Federal Character Committee did not impose a candidate. We had committees working in the university who interviewed people, who elected, who appointed them, who recommended them, and the criteria was very clear, and nobody, when people called, we told them how we did it. We suffered. I think the Federal Character committees of National Assembly invited us later, but they had to accept without trying to change anything. But when you are at the top and you sanction some actions that you know are not right to be done, then you should close your eyes. It's like when you are the vice chancellor and you call the admissions officer and request them to admit one candidate who has not qualified because he's close to you or because you want to satisfy a pressure, then you should close your eyes. If 100 unqualified people are admitted, you can't challenge that. Because if you do, they will forget about the 99, they will talk about your own. That's one. So in many respects, we are the authors of our own crisis in the university. The autonomy, we should be the first custodians in the university system. We should be the first protectors of the autonomy given to us. But we don't seem to appreciate it. The vice chancellors, the registrars, and so we are all eager to please some people outside the system, either hoping to now get something. Some vice chancellors want to become commissioners in their states when they leave office, and so they have to be very close to their governors. Some of them want to just get one very simple appointment that ordinary senior lecturers in the good old days will not aspire. So many things going on. But I want to assure all that as far as I know, in the last 4 years, the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu Adamu, and the ARNU, and I'm fairly close to him, he has never ever attempted to impose one candidate as a vice chancellor or registrar of office in any of the public universities in Nigeria. To date, he has never. Whenever they approach him, let's just come to NUC. And I advise him from the beginning, I say that the autonomy bill does not recognize the minister. This process of appointing VC has no role for the minister, there's no role for anybody. It is those 5 people who will do the selection committee, and then they take it to council, and they appoint. And the only right to the visitor to inform through the minister, just to inform the visitor that we have complied with this and we are going to somebody. But you still see many vice chancellors, many pro-chancellors coming to our offices trying to say, what does the ministry want? What does the government want? I said, all the government wants is go and get the best person for the university system. But some people don't believe this. They still believe that, no, so if you have interest, it means they are ready to guide you down. So really the autonomy is being threatened. Many levels. But that of the internal, threat and actions of we, the principal officers, that is the most disappointing in the whole process. We thank you very much, and I hope this very lecture, this same lecture, I hope it will be delivered to the Vice Chancellor. I would very much like an occasion when we invite the VCs, and we will request Professor Jega to kindly agree to present something similar to this to the Vice Chancellors, because this affects them more than it affects you. More. Because the whole essence of undemocratic leadership, the authoritarianism in the universities, begins sometimes and ends with the VCs. So, with this, we thank you again for the invitation. We thank this chairman and his team, and I'm sure you are aware that we are reconstituting. Yesterday we had about 8-hour meeting with ASU, and I think next week we shall also hold another meeting with ASU, and then NAT has formed an independent panel on its own also. We used to have only 2 divisions, ASU and the rest. The rest formed JAC. The JAC was consisting of the 3 unions, SANU, NASU, and NAT. Now NAT has applied and were not allowed, so they forcefully gained independence from the NASU and SANU, and NAT now stands on its own. And so we are dealing with 3 different organizations. But one of the demands of all the unions to resolve the ongoing conflict and crisis in the university is the reconstitution of the renegotiation team. And the minister has approved. Yesterday I told them the new team consisting of 6 pro-chancellors, 1 from each geopolitical zone, as members of the reconstitution of the renegotiation team, will now be made public by early next week. 3 of the pro-chancellors are professors. 3 of the pro-chancellors selected have no academic background, so that we have another balance. Of course, there is 1 or there are 2 female members among the pro-chancellors. And then we have also reconstituted the team of the advisors. This time around, we have restricted the advisors to just 6 people. That is the NUC, ES, the TEP Fund ES, and then the chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellors, CDC, and the chairman of the Association of State University Vice Chancellors. And we have also now gotten 2 others, the chairman of the Registrars Association, and the Secretary General of the Registrars Association to join us. And this is a recognition of the central role of the registrars in resolving this conflict or in understanding the dynamics of university management. So the 6 teams actually are 2 DCs, 2 registrars. The NUC is for all, and TEPFAC is for all. So, so the 6 of us will be there, and then of course observers will come from the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Finance, Budget Office, Salaries and Wages Commission, Accountant General of the Federation, and so on. So I believe by next week, your members will be contacted, and it is hoped that within a few weeks, the committee will be able to conclude the ongoing negotiations with all the unions, and we hope the final product will be one that is implementable, workable, not something that will continue to ignite bouts of strikes in order to force government to do it. So we are thinking in many ways, and when your members come, we as advisors, the DCs, the registrars, and so on, we shall sit down, discuss, and then advise them there. So we thank you very much again, and we once more thank Professor Akari Dega, and please let us give him a final round of applause.
Thank you very much, sir. As an association that is highly appreciative of the presence of the dignitaries today, we want to make your coming today a memorable one. And to do so, we want to give our token of appreciation in form of the memory plaque for those who have honored us today with their presence. So we'll start with Professor Tayo Jega, and the plaque will be given to him by the chairman of today's occasion.
So this flag, they call it appreciation. This flag is given by ARNU to appreciate Professor Atahiru Jega, OFR, for his contribution to the success of 2020 ARNU retreat and business meeting, presented this day, 29th October 2020, in the glory of God.
The next flag goes to the Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, who is ably represented by the ES of NUC and is to be presented by our chairman, Mr. John Nunabwe.
In appreciation. In appreciation, this plate is given by ARNU to appreciate Malam Adamu, the Honorable Minister of Education, for his contribution to the success of 2020 annual retreat and business meeting, presented this day, 29 October 2020.
The next one is to the Honorable Minister of FCT, Malam Muhammad Musa Bello, and to be presented by the chairman also.
This flag is given by ARNU to appreciate Malam Mohammed Musa Bello, Honorable Minister of FCT, for his contribution to the success of 2020 annual retreat of business meeting, presented this day, 29 October 2020.
The next one is to be given to Professor Abubakar Rashid as the ES of the NUC and the chairman of today's occasion, and is to be presented by the Secretary General of ARNU, Dr. Abubakar Mahmoud. It's from Abubakar to Abubakar.
So, in appreciation, this plate is given by ARNU to appreciate Professor Abubakar Rashid, MFR, for his contribution to the success of the 2020 ARNU business meeting, presented this day, 29 October 2020.
We have a request. We have a request of from the former students of Professor Tahiru Jega, who are registrars in the house, to have a photograph with their mentor. So that is one of the reward of teachers on the planet of this earth, even before they get to Babako. So during the tea break, we will organize more photograph session, but we want to give this these distinguished students of Professor Jega the opportunity of having, yes, we want you to have the photographs here. This way. Come this way, so that we can see you on the live stream. So the ES may please join Professor Jega honor with his students. Who else is still there? Okay, as we round up, we shall have a group photograph with the EAs and Professor Tahiru Jega immediately after the national anthem closing this session. No, after. Well, we'll have it outside. We'll have it outside. Everybody outside. The ESCO will have with both of them. Then we all will go out there.